Okay. Seems like we're good. Okay, so we're going to go to a website. Let's try not to be too distracted. If you want to explore the HTML of a website, there's a couple different ways you can do that. All right. So HTML is what allows you, like, it takes text and renders it into kind of like the grid and the different components that you see, like a link here, or like these are different divs here. So you can see the code that creates like the visual component of a website. If you do, there's a couple of different ways. One is you can do, I'm doing a right click right now, and now you can go to view page source. If I'm in Chrome, and this is all of the HTML consisting of the web page. Even more like helpful than this is to click on inspect. All right. Especially for learning HTML, you can start to see what different what's are called like HTML tags correspond to like the visual component. So for example, let's say I want to see what this corresponds to. I can also just right click on this and click on inspect, and it will take me to the corresponding HTML. All right, so you can see this thing here corresponds to this right here. And you can really confirm that by like deleting it. So I'll press the delete key on my keyboard. You see that? It's now gone. Okay. And I'll do Command Z if I want to put it back. All right, and now it's back. Now obviously this is not altering ESPN's site for like the masses, but on my local computer, right, what my browser is seeing is, it's taking this content and it's turning this into some sort of display. And so, like I said, if you want to kind of explore this thing and just get to know HTML a little better, we'll go through it. You can, like I said, highlight something. So I'll do a right click here, click inspect. It will take me to that element in the HTML. And then I can let's delete NBA. All right, so now NBA is gone. Okay. So how did I get to this? Again, I'm just doing right clicks, or in Mac, it's 2-finger clicks, then going to inspect. Other ways you can do this is you can press Command-Shift-C on the keyboard if you're in a Mac. And then from here, like I don't really need, this is the JavaScript console. We don't really need that right now. But you can move through content. You can move through different text and see the corresponding HTML, or you can go through different visuals and it will take you to that. In order for it to take you to that, you have to make sure, you see this button right here? This is highlighted blue, and that's why as I move through, it's like finding the relevant HTML for me. If I uncheck this, I think it stops doing that. You see that? We're no longer moving through. So I'll check it again. And now you can see as I highlight over NCAA men's, it's kind of interesting. There you can see the text right here. Like maybe we can, hello world, just change it, right? Change the text. Okay, so it's a nice way for you to like mess around and play with this thing. We'll fill in the gaps. We'll start to, teach you kind of what you need to know about HTML. It looks kind of complicated, I guess, but really there's just like 6 different tags that you need to know for this. So to play around with it, there's different tools you can use. You can use this thing called glitch.com. Let's see if So it's built by Mozilla, Glitch, and it will, allow you, let's see if I have here's my index.html. You can delete it and then probably view it. It's been a little while. I think, let's see. Can I do this? Just make a div real fast and put in hello world. And then let's preview it. Open a new preview pane. And so then, this will, I wish it wasn't doing that, but this will display for me. So that's kind of one way is you can use Glitch. So there's my hello world generated from this. The other thing you can do is in the text editor, you can just go, create a new folder, cd into the folder, and just touch index.html. All right, and then open up the text editor, code dot. Here's my HTML. For now, I'll just put in that same hello world. And then what I'll do, I'll type open dot, or basically I just want to get to the Finder. So I'll do open dot, which will open the current directory. And now you can see this looks almost like Chrome. So I can double click on this if I want. And there's my same, right? It's opening this file in the browser. Okay. So that's another way you can do that. So again, what we did was I have a text editor. I just created a .html file. Sorry about that. So here's an index.html file. And then I typed open dot just to be able to view it in my Finder. And now I just double clicked on it. All right. You can probably also just drag and drop it into Chrome. Right. Just drag and drop the file into Chrome, and it also will display for you. All right. In terms of what we need to know about HTML, there's not too much. I mean, there's the whole thing consists of 6 different tags. Let me remember what they are. Okay. Here we go. Heading, paragraphs, lists, divs, images, anchor tags. So let's go through these. Okay, so heading tags. HTML kind of gives priority, or you're able to specify importance of content on the page with HTML. So for example, if you have an H1 tag, right, this is reserved for the most important content on the page. So for example, with ESPN.com, likely this is the H1 tag. We can see. You can see it actually is an H2 tag, so second in terms of priority. I'm not sure what would be more important than this, but I guess there's something. So generally, it's like the logo is the H1 tag. All right, so you can imagine this is going to be ESPN. Notice that we are creating and ending an HTML element by, these are like the alligators, then the name of the tag. So here's H1, and then I'm closing it with this, I guess this is a /. Okay, and we're going to always basically be following this pattern with HTML. Okay, so you can have an H1, if we do an H2, in the text editor, oftentimes you can just do H2, type the name of the tag, and then press tab, all right, and it will create the opening and closing tags for you, and you can then type the content you want. So if you're like, welcome to Worldwide Leader. All right. Now from this, I might want to check my work. We can go to the Finder and drag and drop it. And you can see this is by default, right, larger. And this is smaller. And the same thing, you can inspect the page that you wrote and see that. So we can see this is an H1 and this is an H2. All right. For the content that you write, like if it's a blog or whatever, that would be like paragraph tags. This, depending on the websites, this may or may not be super useful. Like in a blog, you use paragraph tags all the time. So let me think about if there might be any in ESPN. Maybe something like this, like this part right here potentially is a paragraph. See that? This is a paragraph. So that's the P tag right here. And you can see it just has like some text. It's a paragraph, what you would expect. So we can say, we're evaluating the biggest signings. So this is our second one, is the paragraph tag. The next one would be lists. Lists are very, very important. They are all over the place. This may look like, different links or whatever, but if you inspect this, really, this is a list. You see these different LIs? This is how we create list elements with each of these LIs. And then the container for the entire list is with this UL tag right here. So the same way that if you want to create a list in Python, right, it's like you have this open and closing bracket for the entire list container, and then you have like 1, 2, 3, and we put a comma to separate each individual list element. It's the same concept in HTML. So you begin with the opening and closing, like the container for the entire list, equivalent to like the beginning and closing brackets, and then we'll have each individual list element. So this is opening and closing for this specific list element. So let's say it's like NFL, NBA, right? And then everyone's favorite, the NHL. All right. And now I can always just, if I want to see the updates of my page, I can always just refresh. Okay, so just press Command R. So now you can see the same thing here. We're evaluating whatever. This is my paragraph. And now this is my list right here. There's something a little different. So a couple things to note. One, this is a UL. The UL stands for unordered list. Notice that we just have like bullet points right here. You can also have an ordered list, which will change the bullet points to be numeric. This is pretty uncommon. Like I don't know that you see this too often at this point, but it's possible if you work for BuzzFeed or something. So we can move this back. The other thing to point out is notice that this is essentially like feels almost like a nested data structure, right? What we have is we have this outer element, right, the UL, that are opening and closing, right? Essentially the opening and closing brackets. And then inside it, we have different list elements. Okay, so we're opening and closing, we're completing this first list element right here. And we're completing this second list element here, right, with the closing, the /li. Same thing here. Now we're finishing our third list element, and then we're finishing the entire list over here. Cool. That's 3 of them. I can think of 2 more we need. Oh, divs. Okay. When you look at a page, all right, like an ESPN, any page, essentially what you should start seeing are just like boxes. Like web pages are basically made of boxes. So for example, like this part right here, you can think of as like a box, right? It's the header, I guess, but it's like a box. And then this content is maybe another box. And inside this content, maybe you think of this as like the main section. And then inside the main section are 2 sidebars. And then, I don't know, like maybe like the feature section or something like that. So each one of these boxes are essentially divs, now that HTML has evolved, there are other words, like divs used to just be everywhere. Like it was like all of HTML, you would just see the word div everywhere. So they started creating other elements like articles or like I think there is like a header, I forget. There are other kind of HTML section is an example, but these types of things, like I said, are kind of semantic so that we don't have to see the word div everywhere. They do the same things, which is essentially they're just like markers for you can kind of say here's the section that has this ID, we'll get into that later, of like main container, right? And and kind of like we described, there are generally like boxes inside of boxes, right? If this is like our main kind of section, inside of it are 3 other boxes. So in one outer div, there may be like 3 other divs, okay? So when you look at a page, the thing that you may start doing is start thinking, okay, well, really what we have is when I do ESPN, I have like a div and then some sort of like heading or header. And then I have another div and that has like the main content. And you can see, I guess there is a tag called main. And then inside that main content, maybe this is what belongs in the header, is the H1 and the H2. And then in the main content, so I want to open, you can see how easy this is to mess up, by the way. I have to be pretty careful. So let's think about it. I'm beginning this div here, and I'm closing this initial header div down here. You can see the /, okay? Now I'm starting a new div, and I'm ending it here. And this will be maybe for my content body. So I'll move this, this content inside the second div. All right. Generally, you want all of your content to be inside of a div, which stands for just divider, or an equivalent type of tag, like section or article, something like that. Let me see what's in the chat. Do tabs matter in HTML? Very good question, right? So you notice that I was tabbing, right? Because originally this was out here. For rendering the content, for actually displaying it, no, tabs do not matter in HTML. However, this will display the same if I tab it, all the way over. However, your HTML can get messy really quickly, right? So yeah, it matters in terms of reading the code and avoiding bugs, right? And making your lives easier. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to keep things the same. This is an H1 directly inside of this div. So because that I'm just tabbing in once to kind of indicate that, this H2 is directly is on the same level in terms of nesting as this as the H1, right? Both these things are inside of this div, right? Here, notice I have a paragraph also inside of the div. I have a UL inside of the div, and inside of that UL are LIs. So that's why I'm tabbing these in to kind of indicate that. Now we can render it. It won't really look any different. Yeah, you can kind of see there's nothing different about this, but you can look and you can see here's my div. Here's the first div. Inside the div is this header text, which is kind of weird. And then I have my H1 and my H2. And now I get to the next div. And inside this div is the paragraph tag and the UL. Right? And inside the UL are the different, by the UL I mean the unordered list. And inside the unordered list are various list elements. And just like you can delete stuff on HTML, you can delete stuff here too. And mess around and see. You can also practice stuff. You can, if I want to say add, we can do edit as HTML. And you can change the content directly here. If I want to add a new LI for racing, NASCAR, right? You can do that. And then close it. Does that work? There we go. So there's now NASCAR. It only exists, it's not syncing with your text or anything. So if I refresh this, it's gone. Same thing, if you delete this, but then once you refresh, it re-renders the content that's in the file. Okay, so this is just more for sanity, for experimenting with stuff very quickly, right? You can do this. Other questions about this so far? There's only really 2 more tags to go through. So far what we spoke about were H1s, H2s, which are kind of equivalent. This just indicates importance. Paragraph tags, right, just for if you're typing a sentence or two. Lists, right, this was our first nested element. So we indicated an unordered list, and inside of them are separate list elements, right? And then divs. And divs is just how we divide the page. And the main thing for me is to start seeing pages that way. This is probably, start seeing the divs in different pages. And you can obviously confirm it, right? You can hear this is a div. And just like you would think, that here's where the main content, here's the div for the main content. All right. Okay. Links are like what make the web the web. If you think about a link, there's two components that go to it, right? One is the text that you see, and the second thing is what is the web page, like what is the URL they're actually going to go to. So that's what's right here. You know, we can see the text, Cowboys trade for Gilmore. That's inside. That's displaying right here, and then the actual link, the web page, the address of the web page you'll be visiting is this href thing. So let's take a look at this. So let's say this probably should be in the header. Suppose. Okay, let's create a link. So to do that, it's the a tag, and you can see it generates for me. And look at this. So it's beginning and closing text, you know, and you can put the text in here, like Cowboys trade. All right, let's refresh. All right, it doesn't look like anything, probably because there's no href. So this href is saying, where do you want to visit? When they click on this, where will this take them? So I have href equals, and then in quotation marks, we'll put the link. So let's just get this link. All right, so this is the URL, and we can hopefully put this in here. And now let's refresh. All right, now notice that it turned purple already. We can click on it, and that takes us directly there, right? So we're saying, you know, this is the text I want to display. That's inside the tag, inside, let me just make this a little bigger, sorry. So if I delete this, inside the A's is the text you want to display, and then like an attribute, this is called an HTML attribute, is to say the href points to this URL. So the href equals this component right here. Notice this is inside the first a tag, right? The a tag ends right here. The href is an attribute inside of it. Images are very, very similar. So if you do an image, this source is like equivalent to the link. Like this is where you want to go visit. This is the source of the image. So for example, if we go back to ESPN, let's find a picture. It seems like everything is now a video. So we can, here's the copy the image address. If we go to inspect, you can see this is the source. It's using this property of data default source, but it seems like this is the source of the image. Like the image, they've uploaded it right on ESPN.com, and it lives here. Like this is just the same way we uploaded our code to GitHub. It lives at an address. This is the address this image lives on. And so if we want to view it, we can now, inside the image, put a link to the address of, inside the image tag, place the address of the image. Here you don't really need a closing, like there's nothing to put inside the image. You don't really need a closing image tag. You can self-close with a /, like unlike the a tag. Right here, there's like text content to display, but here there's nothing really other than the image to actually show. So you really just need one. You don't even need a closing tag. It's like, this is called self-closing. Let's go back to our web page, our website. There it is. All right. So, with the image, obviously, we're great web designers. With the image, all you really need is just like the source. Where does this image live online? And you can, as probably a lot of you know, right, you can just find that by right-clicking, copy the image address, right, and do that. If it's for your own web page, there are ways to upload the image. You could also just like upload on Dropbox or GitHub if you want to, and then just get a link to like the GitHub URL, and that will work fine too. and then just place a link to the image like that, right like this. Why is this stuff important? Because you may want to pull down this URL and store it, and just store this string in your database, right? And then, like, potentially feed it to an ML model if you can, capture the actual pixels or whatever. Obviously, getting the links are very, very important, because like this text is maybe what you want to read and store in your database or feed to an ML model, something like that, right? So, these are the last two. These are also, like, this is probably the most important one, is just understanding links, or like A tags, right? Where we just have the opening tag, and then in between the opening and closing tag, you put the text, and then finally inside the opening tag, you have an HTML attribute of the href, right? And this specifies where like the page that you'll visit when you click the link. And questions about this material? We didn't go through CSS. We will talk a little bit about it, but I'll let you all like do readings and things like that first. Okay.